Hi everyone, I'm Pere Gimenez, data science and developer advocate at Genie, and today I will be giving this talk about Genie 6 in place of the creator of the Genie framework, Adrian Salceanu, who will be on call in case we need to answer any technical questions afterwards. Say hi, Adrian.
Hi everybody, hi.
And well, so yeah, let's get started with the presentation. Maybe I can take this. All right, so let me start with a quick overview of the status of the Genie framework today. Now, Genie framework is a full stack web framework that is formed by several packages implementing various aspects of the full stack, the main one of which is the Genie.jl, and it's the most famous one, implementing the server backend. Besides this one, we also have a low-code UI layer implemented by Steeple for building reactive user interfaces, the Searchlight package, which implements database connections as an ORM layer, and also first-party plugins that provide features like auto-reloading, authentication, etc. And on top of this, we also have in our product offering no-code tooling for improved not performance, but productivity when it comes to building web applications, such as the Genie Builder that I showed a few days ago in our workshop, and Genie Cloud, which is currently in closed beta. So after this short introduction, this is the outline I will follow. This presentation will be focused on introducing the improvements that Genie 6 brings. So I will go over the most important of them in a little more detail. So Genie 6 at a quick glance. In our work to upgrade from Genie 5 to 6, we have attempted and we have had as our objective to make Genie a simpler, faster, and more productive Julia web framework. And so for this, we have enhanced the API, we have optimized a lot of code for performance, and we have added extra features to boost productivity. And so as a result, for Genie 6, we can say that we have a framework that is on par with other popular offerings like Django or Rails. And we can also say that it's very fast, up to 10 times faster than these other frameworks. And of course, all of these improvements propagate through the whole full stack, affecting things like template engines, routing, caching, etc., and all of the features offered by the Genie framework. So in order to go into a little more depth with the speed improvements, let me say first that Genie 6 is fast. According to some benchmarks taken with WRT and other tools, we can say that it consistently beats over 14,000 requests per second. Now, if we compare this to other frameworks like Django, Rails, or Sails, we can see that well, Genie is much faster, as at most they can handle these other frameworks 6,000 requests per second according to some publicly available benchmarks, which is less than half of what the Genie framework can do. So moreover, we can say that the Genie framework is stable. It has over 500 unit tests for the code stability. We also have a large user base and a native community of both users and developers built around it. And so Genie framework is mature, feature-rich, and it definitely is a production-ready web framework. One of the, now getting on to the new features introduced in this new version, one of the most exciting ones is that has been very often requested by the community is support for running Genie on multiple processors. Now in this new version, Genie is using green threads to handle requests in parallel in a non-blocking manner. And we have also added experimental support for multi-process execution. And this can be used very easily with the typical Julia API, where we add some workers to our application, load the Genie package into each one of them, then we can declare routes into each one. We can declare routes into each one of the workers, and after we spin up the server, all of the requests the server is receiving will be served across all of the workers. Now we have to say that Well, we haven't seen big improvements in terms of request search per second. So in that regard, don't expect big improvements. What we have seen is decreased latency when answering to a request. But the most important part about this is that now a Genie application can be run in a distributed manner across computing clusters. And another request that is very popular among Genie users, especially in enterprise applications, is authentication. We have also improved the authentication plugin, since we have made some improvements to the Genie session.jl package by adding to it other storage options that increase the performance, such as Redis storage backends. Now, since Genie authentication uses this Genie session package, it's also benefiting from these storage performance improvements. And in addition, we have also added support for 2 new authentication schemes, namely better authorization for token-based authorization, which is used in APIs, and also for basic authorization, which can be used in various HTTP agents. Now, in our aim to improve Genie for this new version, we have deeply refactored some parts of the code. And the most important of this is the request parameters object, which I will explain over the few next slides. Now, the workflow with a web application is as follows. The user submits a request to the server, or the web application. There, the web application unpacks the request and returns a response matching the received request. Yeah. Now, the challenge in this for the developer is being able to handle a multitude of requests easily and at scale. In order to make the developer's life easier, full web stack frameworks provide APIs for handling requests in a safe and performant manner. Now, a key part of these APIs is the parameters object, which we can see depicted here in this figure, which stores all the relevant information about the request, such as the query parameters, files that have been uploaded, authentication, data from plugins, etc. And this parameters object is used throughout the whole web stack. Taking a look at the states of the params object in Genie 5, we can say that as of now, well, in Genie 5, the request parameters use the task local storage provided by Julia itself. So because of this params object was readily available at the global module scope, which could introduce, and this design was inspired by Rails, and it's not very Julian, since the direction Julia has taken is that it relies less on global variables, and it proposes more of a functional style. And this design can introduce some scoping issues, and also the parameters call in Genie 5 is not thread safe. As we can see here in this code snippet, where since the params is in global scope, we can easily overwrite it inside the route call with a simple variable declaration. And when we are going to trying to get some parameters from the request, we are not able to, since it has been overwritten. Then, with regards to thread safety, if we try to make a request for the parameters in the header in an asynchronous call, this would not work and would return a task fail exception, which is, well, quite a big problem. And so in Genie 6, we have revamped the request object. Now, each request will get its own isolated context.params object, and this object will expose all the relevant request data, such as the query, the payloads, the files, routing information, etc. This params object will be used to transfer information around the Genie app between modules, plugins, and many other integrations. And moreover, this object is extendable so that any new plugin can incorporate its information into this request object in order to implement its functionalities. Now, if we look at the params object in Genie 6, we can say that we have solved the scoping and thread safety issues by right now, the params object must be explicitly passed to the route, okay, in order to be used inside of it. And besides, we have solved the thread safety issues, and now we can easily use a call to the params object within an asynchronous execution, and it will work. Now, the params argument is still optional, so if in your code you have route declarations that are not accessing parameters, they will still work, as depending on the number of arguments passed to the route function, Genie will choose which one to execute. Now, another feature that has been very often requested by developers is the ability to pass custom headers to the template engine in Genie that generates the HTML and JSON responses. With Genie 6, we can easily do this by modifying the fields in the params object. Here, in this example, we see how we instantiate params object, and we can easily access some of its fields like the response headers, also the response status, and modify them. And once we are finished with the modifications, we can call the HTML generator and just pass to it the params structure, and it will be injected in the response at the header. So this brings us with a much easier way to include custom headers into our responses. Moreover, with this new parameters object, we bring a standardized way to pass information between plugins and modules and so on. So, yeah. And of course, this makes it easier for developers to contribute with new features, as we have a new standard way to implement this information passing. For instance, if we take a look at the authentication plugin, now it is easier to consume authentication information parameters through the use of the authentication structure by accessing its fields within the plugin itself. Moreover, now finishing with the parameters and moving on to workflow improvements that we have introduced in this new version of Genie, we have improved the workflow so that now there is automatic dependency loading, so that modules such as requests and responses are automatically loaded when we import the Genie package with using Genie. This is also the same for the context and the router modules. And this automatic loading of these modules makes it easier to develop, since you don't have to pay attention or worry about importing explicit dependencies. Now you can just use the function calls in these modules directly without having to add any more explicit dependencies. Now, moreover, we have also introduced a new Go macro that replaces and improves upon the Genie.load app call in order to load the Genie app before launching it. In line with these workflow improvements, we have also added the ability to eagerly load the environment variables upon using Genie. And this works for the environment variables defined in .env files in the same folder as well. Now, in Genie 6, if we look at these code snippets, we see that if we were to define some environment variables to say, let's say, the port that the app should use, when we start up the server, these environment variables would not be applied. That is, we would need to set these environment variables manually within the Julia code with the Genie calls. And now with the Genie 6, when we set up some environment variables, then, let's say, for instance, again, with setting the port number, when we spin up the server, it will automatically apply all of these variables. And as I said, this works for environment variables as well. In our line of improvements, we have added a new family of macros to the router in order to make it easier to handle the different types of routes that Genie can work with, such as get, post, put, etc. Now, as I said, this makes it easier to work with the router. And moreover, this new family of macros can potentially improve the performance of the Genie application, since what they do is they automatically wrap the router declaration in a function. And therefore, this can improve performance. Here we have an example snippet of using this new post macro in conjunction with the new params object to define a new route. And for more router improvements, we have added a new small API for grouping together routes that share common paths. Let's say we have a long list of routes with a common prefix. Now it's easier to define them by using the new routes group object. With this object, we can declare it by passing to it a list of routes, defining each one of them individually, and at the end, we just add a prefix that we want all of these routes to have. All of them will be grouped together in an object, and then we can register all of them at once by calling the routes function. In the same line, we have also introduced a new group function, which will take as an argument a list of routes with a specific prefix, and then this will automatically declare all of these routes with a given prefix. And well, this is it for the improvements that we wanted to highlight for this presentation. There are many more, but time is limited. And so we can say that there are other improvements, as I said, not presented today, that have been made to caching for improved performance. Also, I would have liked to give more details about the new sessions implementation, and also a lot of internal code optimizations and improvements in order to make the framework both easier to use, more stable, and faster, as we have seen. Now, there are a couple of plugins that still need porting, most notably those having to do with reactive user interfaces implemented in the stable package, and we are working on porting them over to Genie 6. And also, there's some other exciting features that we are working on at the moment, such as social authentication and static site generation. We're also going to do a big push to improve the Genie 6 documentation in order to make it easier for developers to get started with the framework. And well, as of now, the Genie 6 package is in beta. You can install it from the Julia REPL by adding the V6 branch of Genie. And we expect to keep the development of this beta for the next few months and release the final version in this September of this year. And well, this is it for this presentation for today. If you decide to give Genie 6 a try and have some feedback or some issues that you would like to have help with, or anything, discuss anything related to Genie, please get in touch with us. You can visit our website, open an issue on GitHub, or join our Discord community. And if you work at a company where you are working with a Genie application, and you think that you might benefit with some expert help in bringing your development speed even faster, please get in touch with us, and we will be glad to discuss our consulting services. And well, this is it. Thank you very much for attending. Now we are open to any questions that you might have.
Great job, Pere and team. Yeah, there's a few questions, and we have plenty of time. So let's. I don't have my glasses on, but I can see there's a gentleman in a red. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm very excited by all these new features. I just wanted to ask you thought about new authentication plugins. Will one of those implement JSON Web Tokens authentications?
Can you repeat again?
The JSON Web Tokens authentication.
Okay. Let me relay this to Adrian because he's the one. Did you get that, Adrian?
Yeah. So about JSON token authentication. So at this point, we've already support for generic tokens, which are generated automatically by Genie authentication. but we haven't looked yet into establishing a certain format like the JSON authentication tokens. But definitely we can take a look at that, because now we have all the functionality to support different types of tokens. So yeah, actually it would be a good idea to edit for the release in September.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I have a question about, I've wondered about the relationship between Stipple and Genie. Can you explain that a little bit?
Do you want to explain it, Adrian?
Yeah, sure. So Stipple is a Julia library or an ecosystem of Julia packages that provide reactive user interfaces. So think of something like Dash maybe, and Stipple practically runs on top of Genie. So Genie provides the low-level infrastructure to set up a web server, to handle connections, to basically manage all the low-level features of communicating over the web, while Stipple comes on top of it and enhances what Genie offers by, for instance, real-time WebSockets connectivity, and there's Stipple UI, which is a Julia package that provides UI components so that you can quickly create a user interface for data dashboards or data applications. It includes form elements, so like sliders and drop-downs and inputs and tables and tabs and everything that you need to create a data dashboard or data app. It also includes, for example, Stipple Plotly, which is a plotting package that also works together with Stipple UI and Genie, so you can easily render plots in the app. So basically, it's a reactive application and UI library that runs on top of
Okay. Thank you very much, Adrian.
Thank you.
Any other question? Oh, there's one question. I'll head up the stairs here.
First off, I'd like to thank you for Genie and all the time you spend on Discord. I know you've helped me out with a few questions that I've had there, so that's really, really awesome. Thanks. My question is a little bit related to that, in that Genie, when it works, everything is like magic, and it's just like, wow, this is really awesome. But at least when I develop with it, or just code in general, things don't always work. And when things don't work, it's such a intricate interaction of many different layers. There's the web browser, JavaScript, there's CSS, there's the Julia side at the server and all that stuff. Do you have any sort of tips or tricks you could suggest for debugging when things go sideways?
Doesn't work? Okay, now. Yeah, I agree that being a full stack web framework, there's many moving pieces that are glued together, so it's sometimes hard to debug them. My first suggestion will be to ask for help. Join our Discord, and we reply pretty fast. In a few hours, you will have some help. And we are also currently working on adding to the documentation guides on how to solve common problems, like to debug issues, and where to go, like, for instance, when you have an issue with the reactive user interface, how to inspect, let's say, in the Chrome developer console, where to look for in order to be able to say, okay, this is what might be happening. So what I would say is please tell us the kind of issues that you are having, and every time we come across a new issue, we make an effort to add a new guide or a new example, helping future users who might come into the same issue overcome it. So yeah, it's I know it's hard to develop sometimes, but it's ask for help, and we will glad to update our documentations. And next time, just search for it in the docs.
Thanks. It's not just me.
Yeah, I know.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Okay, well, thanks again to Pere and the Genie team.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, see you, Adam.
Here.